Good morning or afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for Safety Chain's webinar. Today we'll be focusing on food safety and quality operations and tools for success. Very excited to have everyone join us today. Thank you for everyone's interest in our session. My name is Jill Bender. I am the VP of Marketing at Safety Chain Software. Also delighted to have my colleague, Dave Detweiler, also with Safety Chain, who heads up our sales department. Good morning, Dave.
Hey, Jill. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you. So before we get started, just going to throw out a few housekeeping tips for those that have joined us. Thank you again for joining us. There are two options for audio for those that have chosen to hear it through your computer speakers. If you're not hearing it that well, please use the call-in number provided. A link to the recording will be sent out over the course of the next few days. If you have any questions that you'd like us to address, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A tab, and we'll do our best to take care of those and get your questions answered. And then one thing I always do like to mention, for your privacy, you should only be able to see the panelists on part of this call, but as I see people logging in, it looks like we're going to have a good crowd with us today and look forward to today's event. So let's go ahead and get started. For today, really the purpose is to talk about the technology and the tools that are being deployed in food safety and quality operations and why that is, regards to your different challenges and barriers of running your operations and what technology can be deployed to help. Some of the key areas that the technology is improving the success of your operations, results being achieved, we'll share with you, at least from Safety Chain's standpoint, the different successes that our customers are having, as well as assessing if the technology might be right for your organization and some of the ROI components to consider. I'm very excited to have Dave on the call with us today. Dave has been an integral part of Safety Chain and has visited perhaps not hundreds, thousands of prospects and customers alike, and has really been an integral part in really building out our technology and tools to meet the demands of the operations. So I'm very excited, Dave, to have you on to share certainly your experiences over the years in meeting with many customers and prospects throughout the supply chain. And let's go ahead and get started. So one thing we always like to talk about before we even talk about technology, when you think about really what is the end goal of food safety and quality assurance, and certainly this goes without saying, is really the goal is to deliver a safe, quality product. So we can talk about compliance and audits and, saving costs and sustainability, but at the end of the day, we always like to get back to the main goal, and certainly why many people or everyone on this call that their main goal and what they're trying to achieve every single day is delivering the safe quality product for your company. But with that certainly comes lots of challenges and barriers. So Dave, let's go ahead and dive into that. We often refer to some of the challenges of the perfect storm. Do you want to share?
Yeah, and I appreciate that introduction, Jill. Hopefully we can keep everyone else's excitement that I'm here today, too. So thanks for having me, and thanks for having me be part of the series. So what we have seen, and especially I'm assuming I'm looking at some of the people on the phone, too, they can feel this today. What we talk about with the perfect storm, not just the great image here that you're seeing on your screen, but I think we're all being pressed and pulled, in different directions. I'm sure we've all lived through the comment of, hey, go GFSI and you're going to have, less customer requirements, or, hey, by the way, I see the FDA and FSMA releasing the FSMA requirements, or USDA is coming out with some new guidelines. We're all living this today, and what we've seen is it's really just creating this perfect place, this perfect time to look at technology and ways technologies can help in an industry that just continues to be requested and required to do more and more to deliver what you just said, that safe quality food, Jill, or at least to prove that we've done all our jobs and tasks. So I really hear this a lot when I'm out speaking with prospects and customers alike within the industry, at industry trade shows as well, that everyone just feels that stretch. They feel that pain of, oh my goodness, there's just so much we have to do. Am I getting it all done? And I know I hear that a lot from folks, just being simply nervous that they're doing all the right things and getting them all done, that all their programs are being followed, right? For sure.
Right. Well, and what's interesting, too, you think about, the perfect storm and the trends and the requirements that are just being inundated, but that doesn't take into account just the every day-to-day operations, right, as far as the complex job that our prospects and customers face every day.
Oh my goodness, and the fact of the matter is, Jill, it's not only that there's so many things, and these are just some examples, and I'm hoping everybody on the phone looking at the screen goes, yeah, I do some of those jobs. You may even have different folks within your organization that these columns roll up to, right? You may have certified HACCP individuals and a separate group for sanitation, and then you have your quality individuals. That's some of you who are lucky, right, that have the head count and the staff to do that. Many of you sitting on this phone, had the opportunity to talk with some of you before, I know are doing many of these jobs and tasks yourself, right? You are the lead sanitarian as well being in charge of quality and probably managing your supplier program all in the same, and these requirements just continue to get more and more, that's for sure. It's the one thing that we always talk about here at Safety Chain, Jill, and I know you put this in here for me today, so I appreciate it, is there's a certainty, right? So we all are nervous about, well, what's going to happen, right? We have new politicians, we have new organizations, new regulatory requirements that are coming out. GFSI's released, some of the major programs have released their new amendments and their new programs. The one thing that we know for sure is that no one's going to come to anyone on this phone and go, hey, you know what, Jill? It's cool. You don't have to track those sanitation programs anymore. Or, don't worry about it. Your customers aren't going to have any additional requirements. We know for a fact that it's not going to get any easier. No one's going to pull back the requirements that you have to do today, and most likely with pretty much assuredness, you're actually going to have to start capturing more and more and more information, more data, more documents that really just aren't helping the organization today when we're doing it in the fashion we're used to doing it.
No, absolutely. And I think one thing that always strikes me is adding to the complexities is, really from a food safety and quality standpoint, the function is not to sit behind a desk. The oversight and execution taking place everywhere. And I know, Dave, you've been on numerous tours, throughout different companies, right? And looking at these different areas that operations is touching.
It's such a wickedly impressive ability that these folks that we're talking to on the phone today, as well as the organizations that we work with, to handle all of this, right? But the key element to take away from this, and this is something that at Safety Chain, we've worked years and years and years on just getting this right. Because what we know is that you have a person that actually at some point has to go around and walk around your facility, for example, and do an audit, and they're not connected. They're not sitting at their desk. One of the main things I hear a lot when I talk to organizations who do go down the technology path is, it's given my people time to be back on the floor with their eyes up, using their eyes to understand what's actually happening on the floor rather than running around tracking down paper, rather than running around making sure that things have been done because a piece of paper was signed off on. What technology's enabled a lot of these companies to do, knowing that you don't do this sitting in your office, or maybe the proper term is you do a lot of things in your office, and the time would be better spent if you were outside of your office, actually walking the floor, walking the store, walking the field, so you have that feeling, that prevention, those eyes on the field. I had the opportunity to talk with an organization in the Midwest last week, and they said they have high-level QA directors and individuals who spend hours a day sitting at their desk actually just keying in data and reviewing data. That is worthless, right? That's time you'll never get back, whereas those high-level QA individuals could be on the floor looking at a process, identifying product as it's going through. That would be a much more valuable way for them to spend their time in a day. So this is very important, Jill, for sure.
Well, and I know something you're certainly passionate about, so I hear that enthusiasm, absolutely. So when we talk about that, and we talk to, with our customer and prospects, a lot of people have processes in place, right? I mean, it's not for lack of plan structures and programs, but really it's the tools in which it's being managed, whether it's all paper-based or perhaps a hybrid approach of online or offline tools. Anything more, around that, Dave?
Yeah, this is a step up, to use the terms of our Vice President of Food Safety and Quality here at Safety Chain. Legitimately, paper and pen is a step up from rock and chisel, right? It's not giving anything back to you. I don't think that anyone here is, related to paper in any way, but paper is a dumb product. It can do a lot of things, but only if that person's reading it and consuming it and then properly understanding it. And then, by the way, it doesn't give you anything back. So the concept, yes, for sure in the industry, we're seeing some folks getting into the world of, well, I can do this on Excel or I can do some of this in SharePoint. But really, these tools that everyone's using today, and it's funny, I hear it over and over again where people are like, well, you know, we still do this all file-based. That's okay. That's what the majority of the industry is doing right now, and that's why we're here, and that's why other technologies are in the market. But I think we have to look at the technology we're using in the environment we live in today, right? I'm sure every one of you on this call has a cell phone, has a smartphone, probably has email. We work in a real-time world today, right? And the idea that this is not real-time technology that you're using to manage a very important program and a very important processes.
No, absolutely. And you kind of distill, you know, when you think about sort of the challenges of what paper or hybrid approach to managing data provides, you know, Dave, I don't know if you want to sort of take us through some of the key things that we see as far as the bigger challenges with using paper.
Oh, guaranteed. And, you know, the idea that you're doing a lot of this, like Jill just showed you, you know, in emails and spreadsheets, and then you have to go find it, right? And never mind making sure that stuff's done, right? Many of you I like to talk about on the phone, and myself too, I'm very risk adverse, right? So the biggest thing that we're trying to do is make sure that just everything gets done in our program, like I mentioned earlier. But that ability to actually review every record of every process, as we talked about earlier, it's only going to get worse. At what point does it become impossible, right? That you can't do all of that. You can't go through every piece of element of information. And really what you need is down there on the bottom, right? This data-rich, information-poor concept is something that we talk a lot about. And what that means is all of you on this phone are doing such a great job of, you know, I hear constantly, hey, well, we passed our SQF, you know, we got a 97%, or, hey, you know, I've been using paper for 75 years. It works just great. The thing that no one is, or I should say the thing that we're all seeing to start getting put together is there's a lot of information that lives in this world that you don't have access to, that's not being brought back up and regurgitated back to the business, the operation, the facility, to better run your systems. And we're starting to find that very, very quickly now, right? But the challenges specifically, the last one I'll point out is the latent review of data collected. And we like to use an example here. You know, I think we all do this today. Everyone drives in a car, right? And the idea that if you were to drive your car the way you're running your operation, you would actually drive the car using the rearview mirror. Today, everyone running these facilities and operations, the data is latent. The information you're using to run the business sometimes can be 2, 3, 4 hours, or in some cases 24 hours in delay as you're waiting for tests and things like that to come back. Think about how you drive your car, right? You have a dashboard, you have a gas gauge, you have a RPM meter, right, that tells you how your engine's running. This is one of the biggest challenges we see here, right? The data that comes out of it, Jill, but also that ability to real time have that vision. And this has been a big challenge for our organizations that we've been working with, for sure.
Certainly. Well, then, you know, it's one thing to have sort of day-to-day challenges, but then you sort of correlate that to really what the risk and what the end game is of those challenges, right? You know, so.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to talk about ROI later, right? No doubt. And these are some of the areas I think that they tie nicely into risk. But I'm assuming that any one of you knows and feels this from operations. I see some operations staff on here today too, which is really good because I think we're all part of the same organization and the same facility. But, you know, you think about a line just not going up and running initially, right? We have customers that have told us, hey, if this line sits down, it's tens of thousands of dollars if we're not running right away, right now, right at that point, right? The idea that shipping delays, holds cost money. The idea that you're waiting because, oh, you're not sure that everything's been checked or everything's been done. And the one here that I probably would point out and say is maybe not is I failed audits. You know, I look at some of the companies on the call today. You're not failing your audits, but I think more appropriately, it's the follow-up items that come from those audits, right? Oh, here's a corrective action you got to go follow down, and you know, a system can really start to help ensure that all those things are being taken care of. And we'll talk more about the ROI, but these are some of the general areas we see, and a lot of it comes around just that time of your organization spending, whether it's time not processing or time reprocessing items, but those tend to be the very common areas we see from a risk standpoint, Jill.
Absolutely. And it probably should go without saying, too, when you think about sort of the higher risk. And I know that there's, you know, just a plethora of press in the past year or so. It's sort of building in crescendo, if you will, about your brand being at risk. And I think that there's a lot of discussion around your brand being discussed, but really dovetails back into what Dave was just talking about, right, of why is those risks in place? It's how things are being managed day to day.
It's so hard to regain consumer confidence and trust when something happens, right? The thing that we've seen, and I think we all know, and this doesn't even have the last 2 years of stats on it, is that you continue, like I said, we work in this real-time world now, right? There's Twitter and there's Facebook and there's, Instagram and all this kind of stuff of how things are being communicated, right? The idea that your brand being at risk can really come down to one tweet, right? To one Facebook post, to one email. So the idea of keeping yourself out of the news has become more prevalent than ever, right? I laugh, again, back to we were talking about some of the challenges and risks, Years ago, everyone would wait until the next morning to get the newspaper, right? And you'd kind of sit there and you'd be like, man, I hope we're not in the newspaper today. Not that many of you would have been. But today, before you even go home, before there's even an announcement made about something that may have occurred in your facility, it's touching millions of people, tens of fifties of thousands of people. We work in a real-time world today, and this brand risk thing is big. And I feel for it because I think sometimes not all the true information's out and readily available before people start maybe getting teared down a little bit across these social networks. So this is wildly important, and I think we've seen bottom line revenue be affected just across some of these example companies that you've seen here.
No, absolutely. So when you think about it, as far as what really is critical to the operation success, and it's really ensuring the program execution, the programs you've designed, that you've put in place, that you want to improve upon, are being executed upon every day. Some other key critical success themes that Dave and I certainly gone through, sort of catching issues earlier, right, Dave, before they become larger.
Oh, for sure. I think, Jill, the prevention versus reaction concept here and moving things up the chain, right, to your end users, to you having access, visibility, insight into the system, right, it's critical for it. And if I could go back to your first bullet point here about ensuring program execution, that is so wildly important that as you're looking at technologies and you're looking at what technology vendor you may partner with, you all on this phone, the one thing I will say for 100% sure is you've put great programs in place. You've done a great job to this point, and that makes you nervous, right? You're like, holy cow, well, I spent all this time on this great program. I think you always have to look at your technology vendor and make sure that they have the capability to help you with the program you've created, not turn around and be like, hey, Jill, this is exactly what you have to do and this is how to work, because that doesn't work. We haven't found that a standard process, even within facilities, can work. So I think it's very critical for FSQA operation success, but the idea that easy access to records, as we talked about. Today, you're doing it in Excel, on Word, in clipboards. How long did it take you to go get that information, Jill? Go find it, right, when something comes up. It's wickedly important. And then today, right, we'll talk more about this, but the visualization of data, right? How nice would it be? I'm assuming a bunch of you sitting on this phone today would love for me to turn around and say, hey, by the way, you can come to one screen, see all your information, right? You don't have to file through 1,000 pieces of paper. Hope you find it. But these are definitely some critical areas that we've seen, Jill.
Critical areas, absolutely. So then, when you take that, again, there's sort of key trends of then what is the barrier to success? Why is it hard for those four, key areas?
I'll tell you, Jill, I think that if you're asking me, right, which sounds like you are, and since apparently I have the mic, I'll give you my opinion. How about that? But the idea, I would say that the last bullet point here, data-rich and information poor, which we've mentioned, is probably the most important barrier to these successes. And what I mean by that is, for many, many years I've seen in the industry here, right, like I said, you use pen and paper and clipboards today, and congratulations. Many of you are highly certified. You have a lot of great certifications, and you've been compliant, and you've passed your audits. But what I think that everyone is really starting to see results of now is that it's much more. Food safety and quality is much more than just making sure you're compliant. It's actually having data to help drive and run your organization. We've seen customers, and we'll talk about them in a little bit, customers that have shown a true hard dollar return on investment when using these systems. This isn't a nice to have anymore. This is something that you must have in an environment and living in a world that we all have embraced technology, right? So yes, I think the barriers to success at any point here, of course it's tough for everybody, but you're all working very hard. You do have records everywhere, but you go and find those records. It may take you an hour, right? It may take, an hour and a half of your time to go run down and do something else to put all of this together, but it's happening and we know it, but man, is it a pain in the neck, right? So I think that as we look at this and as we move forward, we'll definitely talk about ways that technology can help, especially give you kind of that means to show the organization the value of this, rather than it just be simply a nice to have and overhead for the food safety and quality folks.
Right. And you talk about sort of efficiencies that are gained is huge, but I think the effectiveness is really where it hits home. So with that, let's go ahead and then just dive in. We think about technology, and again, we understand folks on this call, folks use technology in certain ways already. It's identifying, okay, does this make sense for your operations and or, to replace perhaps some manual processes that could help achieve better results. So again, to reiterate, how technology can help, it really does map to sort of the key areas of critical success. Dave, if you want to sort of take us through that real quick.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we can go to the next one. I mean, this reiterates, I think everybody on the phone sees this, right? This reiterates exactly what we're talking about, what technology can do to help. You're going to want to automate your programs. The big part there is not having to go through that stack of paper and figuring out which one item wasn't compliant or which one item wasn't signed off on or which one item didn't follow that standard operating procedure or the current version of the form, right? But really what you get into is real-time data analysis, the idea that, and I'll show you a couple examples of this here shortly, but why not have it in the hands of the end user, right? How many of you have seen a piece of paper on your floor today that says, hey, if this happens, go contact Jill, right? And then Jill, if this happens, go contact Dave. Well, why won't you have a system that wraps around that and actually just works through that process? The idea of centralized records, I think the biggest component there is root cause analysis. You get one chance, right, at a first impression. When a customer asks you that question of, hey, can you give me this information? Hey, something occurred. I need data on this. When an auditor walks in, the idea is you can do that at a touch of a button within a click or two. That first impression goes a long way, and we've heard that a lot from customers that talk about, hey, that initial impression when people see that our system and our programs are locked down this way, really goes a long way, and even if they have trouble even finding additional stuff because of that first impression. But then the final piece, again, I think most important, dashboards, data visualization, the ability to track and review trends. There's an operational component to this that we all can't forget, and I think that Safety Chain spends a lot of time on, is we know you work in a real-time facility that's going. So you can't be slowed down, you can't be hampered, and by the way, if we can give you data to better run that facility, you're going to be in a much better position.
No, absolutely. So when we think about this, and this is where, we like to start to distill this all together, is, really from a technology standpoint, you can bring in different technologies. Dave mentioned, you can use SharePoint to get your documents better organized, or you can, use other avenues, but really to really have impact, it's got to be, what we distill down to these 4 key areas that Dave just covered. It's the automation combined with smart data collection and that real-time analysis being deposited into a repository, and then, as a result, then having that data visualization, and program dashboard. So let's go ahead and just
we're going to have to take that word out of the presentation, Jill.
Yes, I stumbled this morning. Need more coffee to cover that one. So when we look at this, the intent today is not to give you a deep dive on the technology. The intent really is to sort of share why these areas can help your operations, whether it's, in the field, on the floor, in distribution. But the goal really is, just to give you sort of a highlight of these areas. If for those that might want a deeper dive, we can certainly entertain that afterwards. But Dave, go ahead and take us through it. From a program management automation standpoint, share with us why this
So this is important, right? And I think if you just go to the next one for me, Jill, because I think it'll outline it. Every one of these bullets that Jill has here is going to hit 3 key elements. Program management automation is going to give you visibility, knowledge, and control. Every one of these, and I'm going to hit on those 3 words over and over and over again because I think it's wickedly important. But think about the visibility over your program to understand what has or hasn't happened, right? Think about the ability to have knowledge over those programs of what might be trending, what has occurred, right? I love that trending comment, because you think, again, back to social networking and all that kind of stuff. What's trending on Twitter today? Why not what's trending? I just talked to an executive the other day. He's like, I want to come in the morning and see what's trending in my facility, right? I want to see what's happening that's going on in my facility. What's the trends? What are the comments of it, right? And the ability for program management automation is so important. That means taking that great, wonderful program you've built, wrapping technology around it to make sure that things get done, right, on time, to make sure that if things aren't occurring on time or need to have additional attention, they're being notified, and that ability for you to sit here at any point in the day, not only to receive notifications, but also to pull up the dashboard and say, hey, where do I stand? Am I in good standing? Am I in good position? We have customers today that will talk about looking at their dashboard or their homepage before they go home, right, and making sure that everything's been tagged off. It gives them that peace of mind at night. They'll say that it helps them sleep better at night, right? I know everything's been completed on my shift or during my run or during this product. So that's where program management automation really comes into play. It's obviously important that there's, role-based access to the system, but this is really where we start to talk about alerts and dashboards to help monitor and identify issues sooner and quicker, right?
Right. Well, in order to do that, really does come down to what we phrase smart data collection, how data is being collected, and more importantly, how quickly it's being analyzed.
This is where I can go back at our friends, the paper people, right? Smart data collection is a game changer, right? This is something that when you start to think about all the components of what you have in your facility, right? You're seeing here even on this screenshot, a probe where you might be capturing temperatures. You're seeing a screenshot of a tablet. Mobile forms can actually have smart, logical definitions, meaning if Jill pushes one button, it might expose another 2 questions. It might expose another 2 things that need to happen before Jill can move forward. So everyone, I know is always concerned not only about making it easier and simpler to capture data, which we have to, right? This type of technology can't slow your people down, and typically we don't ever see that happening. But at the same time, it needs to actually start to eliminate things like we talk with people with seasonal workers, right? Well, I got to go through this training exercise all the time. That's difficult because when you give them a piece of paper or you give them an Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't know or it doesn't have any interaction with them. It doesn't tell them what they should do. Whereas when you start to look at these type of technologies, it actually can walk the person through that process. And if something is flagged or something isn't completed, it can notify you, right? This smart data collection really starts to take you through into that prevention, this real-time analysis. Hey, Jill, this just happened, and you should know this is what's going on. Or if everything's copacetic and everything's great, you don't need to be notified. So now you're just focusing on the things that have substance, the areas that you should actually go back and actually pay attention to. The last thing I'll say about smart data collection that I think is so wildly important, we all know what's happening in our personal lives, right? You can walk into your house or maybe some of your friends' houses and they have, the little Amazon box, or they're, on your smartphone, you're talking to Siri, and, now all of a sudden you have your thermostat hooked up to your house and, to your apps, and you have music, right? You have a Sonos system in your facility, in your house, and you're, listening to music. You can control your TV in that way. We know that's going to start happening and evolving in these facilities. And that's one thing that we are, as an organization, are preparing for. You see the app here. I think that apps are cute. We knew apps were important 5 years ago, 6 years ago. That's why our applications have always worked offline and had the capability for end users never to be hung up doing it. But where we see this going is true automation. You have a metal detector that could send a series of passes or fails, right, up through your network. You have scale. Today, right, we have customers, their trucks pull up on a scale, we get that scale data, and then we start their process and their programs from that point, right? So the idea that all of these types of systems truly over the next 4 or 5 years are going to actually have the ability to start sending data up to the network will be a lot of fun as well.
Oh, absolutely. And then when all that data gets collected, the key here, right, is that where they're going, where the data is being deposited.
It is true, and we talked about this, right? The idea of making a first impression. One of the things that I've always loved is, our customers talk about having such quick access to this information. Come in and search by a lot number or a batch ID or a day or a shift or a line or a product. think about how difficult that is when you're not using technology of how to go find that information. And we've really seen this help eliminate time and stress and concern across the organizations because the data lives in one place. Not only does it live in one place, but it's all the records that I just mentioned, but it ties back to your standard operating procedures, to your actual programs that are in place. So when an auditor shows up, you can fully bring this all together. But it's been a game changer for certain across the industry.
No, absolutely. And when you tie those all together, then it's the true capability, and this is really where the fun, when you talk about the dashboards, when you're driving your car, you're looking forward, begins, right? With the fourth element here as far as program dashboards and data visualization.
Oh.
Did I say that right this time?
Visualization knocked out. Crushed it. This is the part that I would love for everybody. I'm sure everybody's starting to think that Jill and I are droning on, and I promise we won't much longer. I'll give you some good examples, and we'll keep it moving. But this is the area that I think everyone needs to focus on. I think that not one time, Jill mentioned hundreds of companies and so forth, not one time does anyone go, Dave, this is a really silly idea. Why would I ever want to automate, or why would I ever want to use technology? Everyone rather says, that's a really good idea, but how do we fund it, right? How do I relay to my organization why we should spend money to do this? And this is the game changer, right? That ability to work with a system and an organization who understands, right, that knowledge, that visibility, and that control that you need. We've had customers talk about the ability using our analytics and seeing differences in lines, seeing differences in shifts. Why is this line down more often? Why did this metal detector kick more often on shift 3 than it does on shift 1? Why is one facility versus another facility's production or stats up or down? The idea that this trending information goes so far, and the ability for you and your executives and your management team to now have the data of what's happening, right? What's the most common corrective action we get on our pre-op? Does that enable us not to start on time, right? What's the most common hold or rework we have? What's trended? Does that trend over month, or is that by week, or is that by shift? That ability to get down to end user information, to even see if Jill might be the reason for some of this, has been huge, giving this overarching view and the ability to have real-time access to information. So back to those challenges Jill talked about earlier, right? Real-time access to prevent things from happening, but then at the same time, being able to instantly notify individuals. However, having all of that data to do historical trending, to do reporting on it, to produce this back to help better run your organization. Now you're getting 2 for 1, right? The idea that automation and a system definitely 100% will help ensure compliance and your programs being run properly. But number 2, now all that data that lived in a filing cabinet, all that data that lived on some standard one-person Excel spreadsheet is being combined together. So you can actually trend it. You can look at it. You can see what's outstanding. You can see the most common trends, and you can help better, more efficiently, continually improve, right, because of that data. So as you can probably hear, I'm a big, huge fan and believer of this type of information. This is the data that I think will actually help to change our industry that we're all working in today.
No, absolutely. I mean, to your point, too, when you think about trends, it's, impact each day, or is it impact over the month or the quarter or the year? It's that capability. So again, just sort of wrapping that up, those areas, and, I do want to get forward to our, just sort of sharing the impact in real scenarios that technology can have. But I mean, just, wrapping up from as far as technology tools critical to success, we covered the program management automation tied with smart data collection, real-time data analysis that then goes into your centralized records and document repository, which then can deliver those program dashboards and key metrics for you to manage your operations. So I think that's sort of, when we talk about the 4 key areas, really thanks, Dave, for providing that input there. So let's go ahead.
Hopefully everyone's still excited. I'm on the meeting too, Jill. So let's keep it going.
You kidding? It's always a delight to, Dave and I don't work in the same town or city, but we certainly talk often, and we enjoy sharing because we're very excited about what technology can achieve. So let's talk about that, results being achieved. We just pulled up a couple scenarios here as far as real case scenarios that our customers have shared with us, but I really just to give you sort of a sense of instance in different areas within the operations that technology is having an impact. So you want to take us to this first one, Dave?
I do, and I will say this as we go through a couple of these. I think we pulled out some of these just to kind of prove. I know we have the audience here is fairly dynamic, meaning I have some growers, it looks like some processors, maybe even some big suppliers, ingredient suppliers on here. So the thing that I want you to take away for sure is that our system's configurable across verticals and industries, but these are a couple good examples. This first one comes really back to a key functionality that Jill had mentioned, which is real-time notifications, alerts. The ability that as temperatures are rising or as something isn't being captured or checked, a notification can be sent out. So we had a customer that received a notification in the management office, temperature in a pack house was going up. You talked about automation and the ability to receive data, right? That was able to be reconciled. Maintenance was able to fix the problem, thus not losing product in that pack house. So the idea that this real-time access to information, the ability to have that smart data collection where alerts can be generated, right? So you don't always have to sit there and review, every minute, which you don't have time to do and you're not, it's impossible to do anyway. So this is a good example of real-time notifications and alerts as well as that smart data capture, right? That's for sure.
And ultimately, there was a huge unit of product that could have been lost, right, if they didn't catch it going into the weekend.
Oh, for sure, yeah. That temperature did not get caught. This is a great one. I like the picture, actually, Jill. We hear very constantly as we talk about technology, oh, my users, they won't be able to understand this or they won't be able to use it, which we know today to be absolutely completely false. But as I was talking earlier, everyone's going to ask about the ROI. A big customer that talks about a 58% decrease in customer complaints. So that's a big number, right? The idea of improved turnaround times and really eliminating non-compliant product. This ag processor has both country as well as state and county laws that they must abide by. So the ability to make sure that all of those are being checked within one system, nothing's being missed, and that before shipment, all of that's being confirmed and has been completed. That's a big deal. Think about just the time you spend if you get a customer complaint, or the ability that, to find all of the information that your lab tests have been done, that your forms have properly been completed, that everything's been signed off on. The time that takes in your organization that can legitimately just be eliminated using a technology. So important.
No, absolutely. And I love when we talk to some of our seafood processor customers. We have quite a few, and talk about some of their challenges of a decentralized locations. So this is a nice little story around this one, right?
People on boats, right? I mean, like this is you talk about this industry, and again, Safety Chain's very proud that our only focus is in the food and beverage industry. That's where all of our research and development goes to. We don't focus on airplanes and bicycles or anything else, right? But the idea, especially from a seafood processing standpoint, we have folks out on docks, out on piers, bringing in goods, doing checks, trying to maintain their supplier relationships. But many times, and this is a good one around this processor, they have multiple locations. So looking at some of the titles I have on the call here today, I'm assuming that some of you oversee multiple locations. This person had talked a lot about having to get in the car or get on an airplane to go see what was actually occurring in that facility, right? Now that goes away. You have full access to that with proper, security credentials in your site. You can log in and see what's happening in, San Rafael, California versus what's happening in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You don't have to be at either place, right? And that's been a big deal. Again, I mentioned earlier the idea of not having to sit at your desk and focus on a bunch of paperwork and actually making your job I would assume what many of you used to do, which was spend a lot more time on the floor, a lot more time eyes on the product, a lot more times eyes on the process, rather than sitting around trying to value or, make sure that your paperwork has been completed. And that's what we found from this seafood processor for sure.
Absolutely. So we'll take it over to a manufacturer near and dear to your heart. You know, my friend who enjoys beer or perhaps beverages.
For sure. Yeah, there's some things especially when you're doing mass productions of things, right? You miss one CCP check, you miss one glass and brittle check, you miss one metal detection check. For any of you here on the phone, you know what happens, right? You got to rerun that back through, or you got to put it on hold for a period of time. And again, back to what I had mentioned about how do you actually pay for this, right? Think about those items, those areas, right? Can a software system stop that, Organization that we're talking about here, 5 or 6 times a year, they'd have a check that may be missed just because of the environment, the process they go through, which would put, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of bottles on hold, and they'd have to run that back through. And the time wasted, just in the time wasted in that reprocess and the rework that needed to be done, their comment was, look, if you can stop one of these out of the 6, we feel like we'll stop 6 out of them, 6 out of the 6, it'll pay for itself. These are the type of things, that real-time monitoring, that analysis against specifications. Even think about customer process. It doesn't just have to be a HACCP check. Customers and their specifications, and you making sure you have access to that data is wickedly important. And obviously, if you're not running, you're not making money. I think that's what all of the operations people I've ever met with will say. So it's the important thing.
No, absolutely. And I think just sort of wrap it up with one last, we could talk for hours, but we won't, we promise you, but just one last thing as far as, an area that results are being achieved that's worth sharing today within a dairy processor.
Yeah, for sure. This is a good one. I mentioned earlier about, kind of this world that we're getting to. One of the very common things that we're seeing our customers use our system for is to capture data from PLCs, from circuits. We hear a lot of our customers talking about sustainability initiatives. They have clean-in-place programs. They have water usage programs, electricity usage programs, and how our system is being used, specifically in this dairy processor, they had an initiative to reduce water, right, and steam by 10%. And by doing that, there was some major money to be saved. By having the ability to capture data real time, to understand when water was or wasn't being used, failed washes, re-washes, all of that kind of items that can be tracked in a system so you can better fine tune that usage, and also have the ability to truly create a sustainability program and how you're actually affecting your usage goes a long way. But we saw hard dollar savings here with this processor of just around $1 million a year. And just for everybody on the phone, our system doesn't come close to costing that $1 million for this processor. So a very good ROI, which is great, and hopefully something that you all will be very excited about.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and, and again, in the interest of time and wrapping up a few of the key things we want to cover today, and really talking about, we're not going to do a deep dive of the different ROI components, but sort of the things that are certainly take play and understand technology can help your organization in return. And then talk a little bit about assessing if it's worth, really looking at this for 2017. So when you think about ROI, you always equate it to hard costs, right? At the bottom line, but certainly the soft costs that we talked about a lot today as far as the time. I don't know, Dave, you want to sort of embellish a little bit on those different areas?
Embellish? Sure, Jill. I can do that.
No, I
won't belabor. But hard costs. This is an area that is near and dear to my heart, because I think that, and a lot of you sitting on the phone today can feel that too, right? Like I said, no one thinks it's a bad idea to use a system. What we all have to do is go through a process of how that can individually affect your organization. What is the true ROI on that? And these are just some of the suggestions that we've seen. I gave you a couple examples, but, we always got to think about process and dollars and not being down, and can that data, help you better operationally run the business and reduce waste. Soft costs are great, but I think that everyone on the phone knows that a lot of times soft costs don't necessarily allow you to get the budget you're looking for, right? People say, well, that's okay, Jill, just go work harder. So they obviously come into play, and they will be vital anytime you do an estimate or analysis in purchasing software. But this is a good list of both, and obviously this varies depending on who you are, whether you're a canning facility or a fresh fruit processor. But would absolutely be open to work with anyone on what that might look like.
Great. And then you talk about something that does come up that we always like to share as well. When I first sort of came across this statistics around the cost of paper. I was a little bit astounded, but I think it's worth noting on today's call when you talk about ROI.
We all have filing cabinets, right? It's just an astounding number, something that we didn't make up. So came from a nice benchmark consulting group that you can see here, and yeah, it's astounding to think about what goes into filling up a filing cabinet, no doubt.
Just the cost of paper alone. So when you think about that, and Dave, you know, to your point, and we have quite a diverse audience with us today. You know, I think we've hit about companies for almost every part of the supply chain. Really, the application of this type of technology is going to have an impact in different ways. But again, we look at some of the sort of key themes and questions that we often guide our customers and prospects to think about in evaluating technology. I don't know if you want to take us through a few of these that often come up in discussions.
Yeah, and I'll be cognizant of time. I think everybody here can read these too, but, you know, again, it really comes back to, we know that you have overhead, right? A lot of times we talk about, oh, I need to go hire more people to help keep up with the bandwidth of the paper that, you know, I need to process. But really, you got to make sure that you're paying attention to that data that's coming back. These are some just examples, right? If you're GFSI or, you know, many of you are going to be FDA or USDA, I would assume, you know, those are areas where you're being required to track records and documents and show compliance around them, right? In multiple facilities is a big deal, right? I'm looking at, again, some of the titles here. I know many of you are probably overseeing multiple facilities. It's a good idea to look at technology in that way. As I mentioned, waste and sustainability initiatives, all that kind of stuff that, you know, the areas to think about, especially for you food safety folks and quality folks on the phone today, many times the question is, well, how do I actually show the value back, right? I know it's a good tool. I should have my SOPs in a system, and I should have my records and forms in place. These are some very good areas that you can look at to say, hey, this is a good way to sell it within the organization, right? Have there ever been cost delays, or do you ever have to go through rework, right? Some of our customers say no, and the value really is that Jill sits around and spends too much time keying in data in an Excel spreadsheet. It would be better for her to be on the floor. But these are all good questions to think about as you're looking to evaluate a technology.
Great, thank you, Dave. And with that, there's quite a bit that we covered. You know, the goal really was to sort of present what we're seeing, what Dave's seen in his, you know, road warrior of going crisscrossing across the country, of visiting different facilities, plants, organizations, and what they're coming against and how technology is having an impact. So, of course, I would be remiss if we didn't share just a minute or so about safety chain and how we've learned all this stuff. Certainly is within what we're providing to the industry, and more importantly, our ongoing continuous improvement within this industry, since this is the only industry that we're involved in. So you want to just a very high level to take through some of the packages that we offer within our solutions.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think it's important. Everyone says, well, you know, what's it actually do? What's your system do? So we have different packages that run across the system. Supplier compliance, as you can imagine, you have supplier audits and receiving forms and supplier documents that you need to take care of. For the food safety folks here, you know, you talk about HACCP and HARP-C programs and allergen programs and those type of areas. For some of you, as we mentioned, you know, might have clean-in-place programs or just sanitation programs. You might have clean-out-of-place programs. The idea that you can look and use technology from our package in that way. Many of you, I would say most of you, have some type of customer quality program or a finished product quality program. It's a package that we put together as well. And then lastly, material loss, you know, the concept of data being come in, like I said, you know, trucks on scales all the way down through receiving forms, all the way down through your process. I know we have customers, you know, that will talk about their loss has to be, you know, between 1.2 and 1.5%, and our system's the one that's enabled them to actually not only monitor it, but then control it, and then even go back to customers depending on items at receipt. So these are typically how we align the packages. It is a very package-centric system, so you don't have to use everything. We have customers that will come to us and say, hey, I'd like to just automate the HACCP program, or, you know, it's really important that I look at our CIP usage first, and then we can grow into other areas, and that's absolutely capable as well.
Absolutely. I think that the key thing there is, you know, with packages, it's having the right technology that's really going to give you the results you're looking for, really drive performance, and tying it all together.
Yeah, you can make up all the packages you want, right, Jill? If you don't have something underlying it that'll support it, you're in a lot of trouble. And that's what we're very proud of here at Safety Chain. Like we said, all of our R&D goes into this industry, into the food and beverage industry. I think our mobile apps are a class ahead. Like I said, we've been doing mobile apps for almost 5 years now. We understand that your forms will change a lot, that you should be able to make those changes, that you have equipment that can now send data. But what you're really looking for is a system that's smart enough to tell you and evaluate, right, and verify that data automatically if it's possible. And that's really where you start to talk about that smart data collection. And then, you know, like I said, I can't be more excited or minimize any less how important it is to have this centralized system, not only for root cause analysis and quick access to that data, but also so you can have those reports and get that feedback and help better fine-tune whether it's a line or a facility versus a facility, a store versus a store. All of that's capable within the system.
Great, thanks. And just sort of tying it all together and what we were talking about, you know, again, a lot of information out there, different avenues and approaches folks are looking to take to improve their operations. But really, it comes down to, you know, ensuring that compliance, which is going to help you reduce your risk and control your costs and improve performance. So with
Couldn't have said it better, Jill.
Yeah, thank
great.
you. We always like to just share, you know, again, Safety Chain, as we were talking about, you know, we really do impact throughout the food industry and the supply chain, a diverse set of customers hitting their specific needs and through our solutions and our packages. But ultimately, end of the day, what does it always come back to, right, Dave? It's your overarching goal and why you are at your company, and certainly why you're losing sleep at night is the goal of delivering a safe, quality product and to be able to have technology as an enabler to help you achieve that.
It's the most fun part of being part of this industry, Jill, is that the passion and the desire for the folks I see on the phone here today, everybody I've gotten to meet, there's just such a passion about that, right? We're all just trying to do the right thing. I think technology is a way to help everybody get to that point as well, maybe make our lives a little bit easier.
Absolutely, and that's what we're here for. So with that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is, in the interest of time, we did get a few questions that came in, so Dave, if you can hang out just for a few more minutes, we'll address those questions. I've taken us out of full screen, so for those that are able to stay on and have any questions, you can put them in there. But I do like to just wrap up with a few reminders. Recording will be sent out. It'll probably be this week, not next week, the next few days. When you do exit out of the session, if there's more information you would like or some things that you'd like us to further cover with you, you'll get a nice little form that you can quickly ask for things. And then in our ongoing pursuit of working with industry and working with our alliances and our partners, we often host many different webinars and many different events, things coming up for those that aren't part of our monthly FSMA Fridays series. That's with the Atchison Group and Dr. Atchison. Gosh, we've been doing that series for years now. Just a once-a-month quick update on what all things FSMA and some really good insight each month on what the industry is coming against. So that is happening in February. We have a risk management session. Do you know what your company's exposure quotient is with one of our partners? We will be at the GFSI conference coming up here very quickly, end of February, as well as seafood processing. But I think we'll be at many events, I think easily 10 or 12 coming up just in the next few months. And so hopefully we don't see you online, we'll be able to meet you in person. So with that, if we can go ahead and just address a few of these questions here, that would be great. And then, again, any next steps and how we can help, certainly do let us know. So Dave, let me go ahead and pull through a few. One is just in regards, and I think this is a real good question that goes against our, when we talk about materials loss management and that solution package, but it being able to identify a value tied to each step in your program.
I'm sorry, Jill, can you say that one more time? I
was looking to, really the question was, can you track money or value at each part of, within your program management tools?
Oh,
They're
100%.
talking
So
about,
money,
yeah.
if there's a loss or a hold, it can just be a plug-in number, right, for sure. And that's where we've seen kind of some of the most success. The person knows what that loss might be, or someone else might actually add that into that form. But yeah, that's,
Oh,
yeah,
Dave, I kind of lost you there. Are you still there? It's a little hard to hear you.
Sorry. Yes.
There you
yes.
go. Yeah.
The idea that it can be captured, Jill. How about short answer? Can be captured and can be reported against at each step in each form at any point in your process.
No, great. Thank you. Another quick question that came in just regards to how the system works. Is it something that we just turn on and then the company has to configure, or what is the process for setup?
Yeah, this is really huge, right, especially when you're talking about an organization and how it's actually delivered. We understand that you all on this phone have full-time jobs. That's why, as Jill mentioned, she mentioned Dr. Aitchison, but we have, we actually assign a program team, operational team to these success of each of these implementations. So that way you're not just floundering out there trying to figure out what it's like to take a piece of paper form and make it a mobile form, or, actually build an integration. But during that process, we train all of the individuals as they, as much as they'd like to be trained, so they have the ability to make all those changes themselves. In a real-time world, a lot of times that happens. You get up one morning, you're not sure exactly what's going to happen, so you can't live in this constrained software, non-configuration environment. But the process itself, Joe, we provide tools, templates, resources, best practices, even industry expertise as we go through it with some of our best practices and lessons learned to our customers. And that's what I think really makes a difference, right? I know some people will ship you over software and go, good luck, and we just haven't seen that to be very successful. This is a complex implementation, and we'll be there to support you along the way.
And I think the key there is, in setting it up, that's because our operational team has worked with so many of our customers, and they're bringing that streamlined best practices approach in each one. And then more importantly, is having a system that then grows with you. So as you're identifying the trends and identify areas of improvement, being able to turn around and, cascade that throughout the system. That's it's a partnership that lasts well beyond just the implementation component of it. One other quick question that came in, Dave, just in regards, you made a reference to offline. I think that's an interesting one and worth bringing up in this format, as far as being able to capture data offline, and why is that important?
Yeah, so I love the slide that you showed earlier, Joe. I'll give you credit for it with the bubbles, but this, we're all on this call. This environment doesn't take place just sitting at your desk. We knew, vitally important when we created our app, like I said, 5 years ago, that it had to work offline. And the reason for that was part of your programs, part of your checks, you may not have Wi-Fi access, right? I've been in some, old, archaic facilities, let's say, with very thick walls. You might not have access in the corner of your processing facility. And the idea that you're on all the time, and if you're not able to capture that data, you can't run. Can't run, you're not making money, right? So offline capability is vitally important. The idea that you can be anywhere, anytime, capture the information. We have people out in fields without even any kind of cell service, right? But then what happens is they can do those audits, they can do those inspections, and when they're reconnected, the data automatically flows up. And by the way, I love the term Joe uses, smart data collection. All that logic still works without being connected. So when they download that form, and if they make an entry, the form's still dynamic, right? Way important to make sure that we're living and breathing the same, industry environment that our customers and prospects are.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just address one more question that came in the interest of time. If there's any more questions, absolutely, go ahead and fill out that form or contact us at info@safetychain.com, and we're happy to help you. This is just, this is just actually asking us how to find out more information about our supplier module. Well, that's an easy one, but, again, when the form comes up, or we'll just contact you direct to really figure out what specifically you're looking to achieve and how you're managing it today. Any other things you want to talk about when people are looking at our supplier solution and our package that they should think about?
No, just, the program itself. What are you doing for your suppliers today? And really, I think anything you look at, whatever package it is, Joe, I think that whenever you're looking at it, always understand that you're changing environments, right, from paper to electronic. So, you know, that open mind, I think a lot of people get kind of heard, you know, I've done it this way forever, right? What does that mean? It's necessarily right or the best way to do it if you're changing mediums, you know, from paper to electronic, from Excel spreadsheets to portals. But no, I think that, you know, as you're evaluating a specific supplier package, you know, types of suppliers, requirements of suppliers, and really, truly, what are you trying to get out of it, right? Is it the less overhead, is it the less work, or are you actually trying to go down the path where you can scorecard and dynamically create risk assessments and so forth for your suppliers? That's probably the most important thing with any package you evaluate. What are you trying to get out of it, right? Because we can work backwards from there for sure.
Yeah. And the good news is Dave and the team that he's built out that is out there, our account managers and team to support that often do come and visit you and look at different ways that the impact can have. So thank you for that, Dave. So with that, wow, that was an eventful hour, and I say that because I don't always have the pleasure of having a webinar with Dave, so thank you for sharing this hour with us. And everyone that's on this call, there are quite a few, and I appreciate everyone's time and look forward to answer any more questions that come up. But again, really the goal here was just to sort of talk about technology and looking into 2017. What is the goals? How are you looking to improve your operations, and should technology be a part of that? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's session. Thank you again for everyone that is online. A recording will be sent out in the next few days. And thank you, Dave, for continuing to share all your experience that you've had out there with hundreds and thousands of prospects and customers.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us. Everybody, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, too. So thanks for joining us. Look forward to talking to some of you.